The reading continues at verse 66. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. "If you are the Christ," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "If I tell you, you will not believe me, and if I asked you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God." They all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" He replied, "You are right in saying I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any more testimony? We've heard it from his own lips." Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Christ, a king." So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." But they insisted, "He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here." On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time.
The story continues in verse 8. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased, because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. For he had heard about him, and he had hoped to see him perform some miracles. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he has sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish him and then release him." With one voice they cried out, "Away with this man! Release Barabbas to us!" Barabbas had been thrown into prison for insurrection in the city and for murder. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate pleaded to them again. But they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" For the third time he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him punished and then released." But with loud shouts, they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demands. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they had asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will.
Well, now it's time to be quiet. And I'd suggest close your eyes and try and focus on what's inside and try not to be distracted by the things that are around you. And in this moment, imagine that you are transported back to Pilate's court at the time Jesus is on trial. You see Pilate standing above the crowd. He's the one in charge. What he says is law in this court. But in spite of that, he looks nervous. The events he's caught up in have got somewhat out of control. Look closely. See the sweat on his forehead, the nervous twitch of his mouth, and the sideways glancing of his eyes. And you also see the crowd, bustling, hostile, demanding. They're led by the Jewish leaders, and the loud and surging crowd is baying for blood. You can see the gleam in their eyes and the strength of their numbers, the passion stirring them, feeding the hunger for what they want. And then you see Jesus standing quietly in the shadows. He's wearing an elegant robe which only partly covers some of the cuts and bruises and abrasions that he's received. In spite of his obvious tiredness and physical weakness, you see an inner strength in his bearing. The way he's standing, the manner in which he gazes so fearlessly and confidently at both Pilate and the angry crowd. Pilate addresses the crowd. "He's done nothing to deserve death. I'll punish him, then release him." It seems fair. The punishment will hurt him, and the crowd will be satisfied. You see Pilate smile, but his smile quickly fades. "Away with him," they cry. "Release Barabbas if you're going to release anyone." You feel the tension mount. Pilate versus the crowd. And you wonder whose side you might be on. Again, Pilate appeals to them and they shout, "Crucify him!" A third time, Pilate protests, but the crowd will have none of it. And Pilate finally concedes and surrenders Jesus to their will. Now you look again at Jesus, standing quietly, accepting judgment. He looks so weak and vulnerable, and yet somehow at the same time, so much in control. So think about you. Where do you stand in this confrontation? Do you want to stand with Pilate, trying to get Jesus off the hook? Do you want to stand with Jesus, offering support and encouragement? Or do you find yourself amongst the crowd, contributing to his imminent death? Where do you belong in this scene? Think about your life, your relationships, your attitude to others, your attitude to Jesus himself. Are there times when you let him down, when you turn your back on him, when you fail to stand on his side in your thoughts or your words or your actions? Are there times when pride or selfishness or greed has come between you and a full and open friendship with Jesus? Think about how your life may have contributed to this moment, how at least some of this may be because of you. Look again at Jesus. What would you want to say to him right now? How do you apologize? Lay yourself bare before him. Confess what you have done which has contributed to this moment. Take a little time to tell him right now how you have added to his grief. Then you see Jesus smile at you. He extends to you a hand of love and compassion and whispers through cracked, dry lips, I forgive you. I'm doing this because I love you. Let his statement wash over you and then respond to him. Say whatever you want to say. Express sorrow, love, gratitude, commitment, and feel his presence as he embraces you, as he listens to you, as he affirms his love for you. This is for you. All this for you. You'll never be the same again once you've genuinely engaged with Jesus. Let yourself go. Be confident in his love. Do it now and feel the power of Jesus' embrace.